Before you say a single word in a project management interview, the person sitting across from you has already made their decision.
They absolutely have.
Right. I mean, before you even shake hands, before you sit down or, before you log into the video call and do that whole awkward microphone check.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, exactly. The hiring manager has already read a story off your resume, and they have done it in roughly 9 seconds.
9 seconds.
That is the reality of the market right now. 9 seconds is all it takes for a stranger to look at a piece of paper and just, determine your entire professional worth.
It is a brutal reality, but I mean, it is the only reality we have. So this deep dive is not about what you say in the room once the interview actually starts.
Right, because we already did that.
Yeah, we have covered interview answers and STAR methods and stakeholder management tactics extensively in previous sessions. So today is entirely about the silent story you walk in with.
The narrative that is just shouting at the hiring manager before you even open your mouth.
Exactly. You are going to learn how to read your own career trajectory exactly the way a ruthless, time-starved hiring manager reads it.
Which is not how you read it.
Not at all. You will learn to detect the weak signals on your resume before they cost you an offer. And most importantly, you will learn how to actively reshape your professional story so it operates as a weapon for you.
Instead of a liability against you.
Right.
Okay, well, let us unpack this. Because the homework we gave you at the end of our last session was, it was deeply uncomfortable.
People hate doing it.
They really do.
Yeah.
We asked you to take a hard look at the last 5 years of your life on paper. We asked you to just strip away your ego, look at the titles and the dates, and ask yourself what story that trajectory is broadcasting to the market right now.
And looking at your own history that way is painful.
Yeah.
Because it stops being a list of things you did, and it starts looking like a mirror of your actual market value. So we have to completely change the way we think about the resume itself.
You have to stop treating your resume like a historical ledger.
Yes. The vast majority of professionals operate under this deeply flawed assumption that a resume is just a chronological receipt.
Right, like a receipt from the grocery store.
Exactly. They treat it like a list of everywhere they have swiped their security badge for the last decade. But it is a fundamental misunderstanding of the tool. Your career is not a job. Your career is a direction.
It is a vector.
It is a vector. And if we remember basic physics from high school, a vector has two primary components. It has magnitude and it has direction.
Let's separate magnitude and direction right now. Because people obsess over magnitude.
Oh, completely.
I see this constantly with practitioners.
Yeah.
When people want to sound impressive, they immediately reach for magnitude.
They talk about the big numbers?
Yeah. They talk about the massive budget they control. They talk about the 50-person head count, or, they drop the name of the Fortune 500 company they work for. Magnitude is just the sheer overwhelming weight of your experience.
And magnitude is comfortable because it is easily measured. It feels like armor. If you managed a $10 million budget, you feel untouchable.
Right.
But here's the secret that most candidates never realize. While magnitude absolutely matters, it is not what hiring managers read first when they scan that paper in 9 seconds.
Really?
Yeah. The human brain does not process the weight of the budget first. It processes the movement.
They're looking for the slope.
Exactly. They're looking at the direction of your vector. So picture a simple graph in your head right now.
Okay.
On the horizontal axis at the bottom, you have time, the past, the present, and the future. And then on the vertical axis on the side, you have career progression and complexity.
Right. So going up means getting more complex.
Yes. The absolute ideal trajectory is a clean line rising at a sharp 45-degree angle. It is a slope that cuts right through the middle of that graph.
When you look at a resume with a 45-degree slope, it just feels right.
Yeah.
It is the classic intentional progression. Let's look at a concrete example so people can visualize this. Go for it.
So year one, you start as a project coordinator. You are taking meeting minutes, managing the risk register, doing the administrative heavy lifting.
Standard entry level.
Right. Then 2 years later, you earn the project manager title. Now you are handling medium-scale software deployments on your own.
Upward movement.
Exactly. And then 3 years after that, you step into a senior project manager role. Now you are running enterprise-level programs with matrix teams across 3 different time zones. The line is consistent. The momentum is undeniable.
That is the perfect 45-degree slope.
But, and I am going to stop you right there, because I have to push back on behalf of everyone listening who is currently looking at their resume and just sweating right now.
I know where you're going with this.
Real careers are incredibly messy. Almost nobody has a perfect, pristine 45-degree line that never wavers.
That is true.
I mean, practitioners deal with corporate restructuring. People get laid off because their division gets shut down. Or, people make sideways moves just to get away from a completely toxic vice president, which is totally valid.
Right. Some people deliberately take a pause to care for a sick family member.
Yeah.
Or they get stuck in a perfectly fine role for 4 years because the company simply froze all promotions to save money. The reality of the working world just does not draw straight lines.
No, I completely agree with you. The reality of a lived career is totally chaotic, but you have to understand the psychology of the person sitting across from you.
The hiring manager.
Right. The hiring manager is not a therapist. They are not there to understand your personal journey. Fundamentally, a hiring manager is a highly stressed, risk-averse pattern recognition machine.
That is a great way to put it.
When they look at your messy, realistic timeline, they do not see your toxic boss or your company's promotion freeze. They are instantly trying to answer one specific binary question. Is this candidate's career accelerating, plateauing, or declining?
And they are making that calculation in 9 seconds. So if they see a dip, they do not assume the company restructured. They assume you failed.
Exactly. Which brings us to the most dangerous element on any resume. The core threat is the untreated flat patch.
The plateau.
Right. What actually happens when a plateau appears on the page? Let us say you were a project manager at the same mid-sized logistics company for 6 years.
Okay.
Your title never changed. You never got a senior designation. The hiring manager spots that flat plateau immediately.
Now, to the candidate, that 6-year flat patch might just be a boring factual reality.
Yes.
Maybe the company was simply too small to have a senior project management tier. There was literally nowhere to go. The work was good, the pay was fine, so they stayed. It is just a fact.
But to the pattern recognition machine scanning the page, it stops being a factual event instantly. It gets interpreted as a character trait.
Oh, wow.
This is exactly where the trap snaps shut on highly competent people. The hiring manager looks at a 6-year plateau, and their brain unconsciously decides that you lack ambition.
Or worse.
Or worse, their brain decides that you are simply incapable of operating at a higher level. The factual event of a flat title morphs into a devastating character verdict. They assume you topped out.
And that character verdict is like a virus.
Yeah.
It infects everything else that happens in the room.
It absolutely does.
If that silent trajectory verdict is negative before you even speak, it completely poisons the well. It creates a dirty lens that the interviewer looks through for the next hour.
A dirty lens, yes.
You could be sitting in that chair, and they ask you a standard behavioral question about complex stakeholder management. And you could deliver a brilliant practitioner-tested answer.
A flawless STAR method response.
Right. You could talk about navigating matrix organizational dynamics, resolving competing priorities between the marketing and IT departments, securing executive buy-in. A textbook perfect answer.
But because of that dirty lens.
Exactly. Because of the dirty lens, the hiring manager is not actually hearing your brilliant answer. They're sitting there silently wondering something else entirely. They are thinking, well, if you are truly this good at managing complex stakeholders, why on earth were you stuck at the exact same middle management level for 6 years? Your verbal brilliance just cannot overcome their visual verdict.
That is the exact internal monologue happening behind their eyes. The silent verdict colors all the verbal evidence you provide. So when the stakes are this absolute, you cannot afford to be passive.
You have to act.
You have to become your own ruthless diagnostician. You need to run a high-powered X-ray over your own career before you ever attach that PDF to a job application. You have to find the disease before they do.
So we need a system. We need a diagnostic toolkit to actually look at our past and figure out what it is broadcasting. How do we break this down?
Well, we use a very strict 3-zone timeline framework to evaluate your career trajectory. We split your professional life into 3 distinct areas: the past, the present, and the future.
Okay, past, present, future.
And every single zone has a specific job to do during the interview. Let us start by unpacking the past zone.
All right, let us look at the past.
You need to stop thinking of your past as a biography. I want you to think of the past zone exclusively as your value evidence area.
The value evidence area. That strips all the emotion out of it.
It has to strip the emotion out. If you strip away all the corporate theater, the forced pleasantries and standard behavioral questions, a job interview is an incredibly simple, cold transaction.
It is a business deal.
It is. It is a hiring manager inspecting your past for empirical evidence of high-value performance. They are making a calculated, highly expensive financial bet that you will repeat that specific performance for their department. So your past is nothing more than the collateral for that bet.
But here is where practitioners get confused. Because if the past is just a factual record of what we have done, and it is the collateral for the bet, are we not supposed to list absolutely everything?
That is what people think.
Right. The standard advice from every generic career center is to make sure there are 0 gaps on the resume. We are taught to put it all down, justify every month of our lives, and show the full breadth of our experience.
And that generic advice is precisely the failure mode of the past zone. Presenting your past as a flat, uncurated list of every task you have ever completed completely destroys your upward slope.
It flattens it out.
It is visual self-sabotage. You cannot give the junior reception job or the basic administrative coordinator role from 15 years ago the exact same visual weight and page space as the massive multi-million-dollar digital transformation program you ran last year.
Because if everything is given equal weight, there is no sense of direction. It all just looks like a flat block of text.
Exactly. If you list every single bullet point of your early career with the same granular detail as your current peak roles, the 45-degree line flattens out entirely. You start to look like a generalist who does a little bit of everything, rather than a specialized professional climbing a very specific, deliberate ladder.
You lose the vector.
Right. You must selectively highlight only the evidence that builds the upward slope.
Give me a tactical example of how we actually curate this on the page. Because people are terrified of deleting their history.
You have to be ruthless. Let us say you started your career 12 years ago doing basic IT help desk support before moving into IT project management.
Pretty common path.
Very common. Your current resume probably has 5 bullet points under that help desk role, detailing how you reset passwords and manage ticketing queues. Delete almost all of it.
Just cut it.
Trim that early low-level work down to the absolute bare bones. 1 line. Simply establish that you have foundational technical exposure. Then take all that reclaimed page space and expand the complex, high-stakes project management work you did in the last 3 years.
Oh, I see.
You are actively curating the evidence. You are forcing the reader's eye to follow the steep climb in complexity.
You're intentionally starving the early years of detail to feed the recent years. That creates the visual slope.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. But that brings us to the present zone, the current day. And I know from talking to hundreds of professionals, this is where the massive anxiety lives.
Oh yeah, people panic about the present.
They have knots in their stomachs about their current title, their current salary, and the specific mundane daily tasks they are executing right now. If a practitioner feels stuck or undervalued today, they feel like their entire resume is ruined. They think their current job defines their entire market value.
What is genuinely fascinating here is that your present actually matters far less than your direction.
Wait.
Yeah, candidates obsess over the present moment, but mathematically, the present is just a single dot on the graph. It is 1 coordinate.
I am going to challenge you on that.
Right.
Because that feels completely counterintuitive to the lived experience of applying for a job. How can my current job, the thing I do for 40 hours a week right now, not be the single most important thing to a hiring manager?
Because of the principle of the vector. A single dot tells you nothing about momentum. 2 separate people can stand on the exact same dot on the graph. They can have the exact same title. Let us say they are both currently holding the title of project manager. They can have the exact same base salary of $95,000. But they are telling entirely opposite stories to the open market.
How so?
Consider person A. Person A was a senior project coordinator just 12 months ago. They crushed their deliverables, earned a promotion to project manager this year, and took on their first dedicated product launch.
So they are moving up fast.
They are clearly on the way up. They have massive velocity. They are just pausing for a brief moment at this current coordinate.
Right.
Now consider person B. Person B was a director of a project management office 3 years ago at a different firm. They got burned out, stepped down to senior project manager, coasted for a bit, and recently took a job as just a standard project manager at a new company to reduce their stress.
Ouch.
Right. Person B is on the way down, their velocity is negative, and they have stopped.
So they are standing on the exact same dot.
Exactly the same.
If you just look at their current LinkedIn headline, they are identical. But the velocity passing through that dot is totally different. Person A is a rocket ship. Person B is a falling rock.
The current level is almost irrelevant compared to the vector running through it. You must internalize this actionable insight if you want to win high-level offers.
Stop worrying about the dot.
Never be overly concerned with where you are right now. Do not let your current stagnant title destroy your confidence in the interview room. An elite interviewer is not buying your current dot. They are buying the line that passes through it. They are buying your trajectory.
So we curate the past to build the steep slope. We stop panicking about the present dot because it's just a coordinate. That leaves the future zone,
The third piece.
the third piece of the timeline. And this is a space of pure opportunity. But it is also where candidates completely fumble the most standard predictable interview questions of all time.
They stumble so hard on these.
Questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or, what are your long-term career goals? People give the most generic, uninspired answers to these questions.
Well, they fumble these questions because project managers in particular have a built-in professional cadence that breaks their ability to answer this well.
What do you mean?
Think about the daily life of a practitioner. Project managers are hardwired by their daily work to think in incredibly short 6 to 12-month horizons.
Oh, absolutely.
You are conditioned by the software development lifecycle. You are trapped in the 2-week agile sprint cadence. You are managing the fiscal year budget allocation. Your entire professional brain is trained to look no further than the end of the current project phase.
Just get it done.
You get the deliverable out the door, and then you reset.
That is painfully accurate.
Mm.
I mean, if you sit me down in an interview and ask me what my ultimate goal is, my instinct, my practitioner muscle memory, is just to say, my goal is getting this current ERP system launched without crashing the servers by Q3.
Exactly.
My horizon is totally limited by my current Gantt chart.
But if you want to project a strong, magnetic future in an executive interview, you must consciously break that sprint cadence. You have to manually override your practitioner instincts.
You have to look further out.
You have to zoom out to a 2 to 3 year horizon. You need to talk about your career as a strategic portfolio of skills and operational impacts, not just a series of tactical task completions. You need to articulate a destination that continues that 45-degree upward slope we built in the past zone.
I really appreciate this framework because it has such strong, undeniable financial undertones. We are talking about trajectories, portfolios, and bets. Evaluating a candidate really is exactly like evaluating a financial investment.
It relies on the exact same psychological triggers. A candidate with a strong, clearly articulated upward trajectory is the equivalent of an appreciating asset.
An appreciating asset.
When a hiring manager sees that clean 45-degree line and hears you articulate a future that goes even higher, a very specific emotion takes over. Hiring you feels like getting in early on a phenomenal tech stock right before the price explodes.
They want a piece of that momentum.
They want to capture that momentum. They want your upward velocity to pull their own department forward.
Wow.
Conversely, a flat trajectory or a candidate who cannot articulate any vision for the future beyond finishing their current tasks feels like buying a depreciating asset.
Oh, man.
It feels like buying a used car. The moment they hire you, your value starts dropping, and no hiring manager wants to spend their budget on a depreciating asset.
The diagnostic toolkit is perfectly clear. We ruthlessly curate the past evidence to build the visual slope. We actively downplay the present point as just a coordinate. And we project the future to prove we are an appreciating asset.
That is the baseline.
It is a great system. But we have to address the elephant in the room. What do we actually do when we run this diagnostic on our own resume and we find an actual undeniable break in our line? Because like we established earlier, life happens. The line breaks. Sometimes things go backward.
Let us address the absolute worst-case scenario first. The most jarring example of a broken line is the reversed sequence.
The reverse sequence.
Imagine a candidate who spent 3 years as a senior project manager. Then they took a job as a standard project manager. And today, they are sitting in front of you applying for a project coordinator role.
Oh, boy. Right.
The hiring manager's gut reaction to that sequence is going to be immediate, and it is going to be incredibly unkind. That does not look like a pause. That looks like a collapse.
It triggers every single alarm bell in the pattern recognition machine. The silent assumption, the character verdict, is that this person simply could not handle the pressure of the senior role.
They cracked.
They failed, they got demoted or fired, and now they're tumbling backward down the corporate ladder, just desperately grabbing at whatever junior role will take them.
Now, the reality of these breaks is that they are very often completely justified by external factors.
Very often.
That senior project manager might have been working at a highly volatile tech startup that completely collapsed overnight. They had a mortgage to pay, so they took a lesser title at a stable enterprise company just to survive.
Happens all the time. Or perhaps they relocated across the country to support their spouse's medical residency, and they had to take whatever title was available in a new, smaller market. Or, they deliberately stepped down a title to move from a dying legacy industry, like print media publishing, into a booming high-margin industry like artificial intelligence.
So the actual problem is never the break itself.
No.
The real failure is leaving the break untreated on the page. The failure is leaving a void of context for the hiring manager to interpret negatively.
Exactly. This is a fundamental rule of human psychology. If you leave a void of information, the human brain will always fill that void with the most negative possible assumption as a survival mechanism.
To protect themselves.
Right. The hiring manager will assume the worst to protect their department. You have to treat the break actively. And treating it requires a very specific 3-step tactical process. Detect, reframe, and negotiate.
Let us walk through those. Step 1 is detect, and this goes right back to the uncomfortable homework.
The radical honesty.
It requires radical honesty. You cannot fix a break that your ego refuses to acknowledge. You have to comb through your own resume like a hostile auditor.
Be brutal with it.
Look for the flat titles. Look for the uncomfortably long stretches sitting in one role without advancement. Look for the sideways hops between random departments that do not seem to make linear, logical sense to an outsider.
You have to find your own breaks before the hiring manager does. Because if they find it first, you have lost the narrative.
You are on defense.
Exactly. So once you have detected the breaks, you immediately move to step 2, reframe.
Reframe.
You must assign a generous, historically true meaning to the break. And let me be absolutely unequivocally clear about this point. This technique is never about lying.
No, definitely not.
It is never about modifying your days of employment. It is never about making up fake senior titles. Ethics and honesty are non-negotiable baseline requirements.
Of course.
Reframing is simply about selecting the true narrative that best serves your upward trajectory.
And this is where we need to get into the weeds. This is where it gets really interesting for the practitioner. Let us run a tactical scenario of reframing a flat title.
Okay, well, let's do it.
I want to go back to that person we talked about earlier, the one who was stuck as a project manager for 6 years with 0 promotion.
Plateau.
They detected the flat patch. Now they are in the interview. The hiring manager says, I see you were in the same role for 6 years. How does the candidate reframe that plateau without sounding defensive?
Well, the candidate has to understand that a corporate job title is only one single axis of a career trajectory.
Right.
It is the most visible axis, sure, but it is not the only one. Scope of work is another axis. Technical complexity is another axis. The sheer scale of the budget is another axis. The seniority of the stakeholders you report to is yet another axis.
There are so many moving parts.
Exactly. If your title axis was flat for 6 years, you must immediately pivot the narrative to the axis that was climbing dramatically behind the scenes.
So you acknowledge that the title stayed the same, but you prove that the actual reality of the daily work was scaling up massively.
Precisely. You do not get defensive. You lean into it. You sit in the interview and you say, you are absolutely right. My title remained project manager for 6 years. However, while the title stayed static, my scope of responsibility multiplied exponentially over that timeline.
That is a great opening.
In year 1, I was managing single-stream local deployments with a total budget of $50,000. But by year 6, I was leading our global enterprise ERP integration. I was coordinating 5 cross-functional teams across 3 continents. I was reporting directly to the executive steering committee, and I was managing a risk portfolio worth over $4 million.
The magnitude just jumped.
Right. And then you finish by saying the title was just a corporate formality based on our HR structure. My actual trajectory was a steep, continuous climb in complexity and enterprise risk management.
That is a brilliant verbal judo move that completely neutralizes the dirty lens.
It shatters the lens.
You take the exact thing they thought was a weakness, the 6-year plateau, and you use it to prove that you actually have a massive 45-degree upward slope. You just expose that their assumption was based on a lazy human resources department at your old company, not a lack of ambition on your part.
You selected the true, high-value narrative. You provided the context that fills the void. Now let us tackle a different kind of break. What if it was a genuine, undeniable step back in title? What if you actually took a title cut to change industries entirely?
Right, let us look at the person moving from a dying industry like print media into a hyper-growth space like artificial intelligence.
That is a tough transition.
They went from senior director of print operations down to a standard project manager at an AI firm. How do they defend a literal demotion?
We call that specific reframe the intentional acquisition.
The intentional acquisition.
You frame the step back not as a failure to maintain your seniority, but as a highly calculated, aggressive, deliberate detour.
Make it sound planned.
Exactly. You look the hiring manager in the eye and you tell them, I recognized 4 years ago that the future of complex program management was entirely in artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Okay.
I knew I needed to be in that space. So I intentionally took a sideways step into a standard project management role at a leading AI firm. I did it simply to acquire the foundational technical exposure and the domain expertise I needed for the next phase of my career.
That is powerful.
It was not a step back. It was a strategic, calculated investment in my own long-term skill set, and it gave me the exact technical foundation I need to lead your AI integration today.
Calling it an intentional acquisition completely flips the power dynamic of the interview. You stop apologizing for a gap or a demotion, and you start bragging about a long-term strategy.
You look like a genius.
It makes you sound like a master strategist. It makes you sound like you are playing chess 3 moves ahead while everyone else is just playing checkers, reacting to whatever job opening pops up. You own the narrative. You are the architect.
Which brings us perfectly to the third and final step of fixing a broken line. We have detected, we have reframed, now we execute the power move, negotiating the trajectory.
The power move.
This is the boldest, most proactive, and most uncomfortable move a candidate can make. It is not just about explaining your past history to make them feel better. It is about actively reshaping your future trajectory during the job offer phase itself. You are drawing the next segment of the line in real time.
Let us set up a very common, very dangerous practitioner scenario for this. Let us talk about the 30% trap.
Oh, the 30% trap.
This happens to good project managers all the time. You interview for a new job, you crush the interview, they love you, the recruiter calls you and they extend an incredible offer. The new company is offering you a massive 30% jump in your base salary.
It is life-changing money.
It is. You can finally remodel the kitchen. But you look at the offer letter, and the job title is the exact same title you currently hold at your old company.
You are flatlined.
You are a project manager now, and they are hiring you as a project manager. It is incredibly tempting to just sign the paper, take the massive pile of money, and celebrate.
It is deeply tempting. Human nature screams at you to take the money. But it is a lethal trap for your long-term trajectory.
Lethal.
Taking the money but accepting the exact same title is a strictly horizontal move. It does absolutely nothing to improve your slope. If you blindly accept that offer, you are going to be sitting in your next job interview 2 or 3 years from now, and you are going to face a massive problem.
What is that?
You will have to explain to that future hiring manager why you have been stuck at the exact same middle management title across 2 entirely different companies for 5 years. You did not fix the flat patch. You just got paid more to kick the flat patch down the road.
You traded your long-term momentum for a short-term cash grab.
Exactly.
So how do we actually execute the power move? We have the offer letter in hand. The money is great, but the title is flat. What are the exact words we use to fix it?
You go back to the internal recruiter or the hiring manager, and you ask them to extend the offer at the senior title. You maintain extreme professional warmth, but you hold the line on your value.
Okay.
You tell them, I am absolutely thrilled about this offer, and the compensation aligns perfectly with my expectations. However, looking at the immense scope of the enterprise rollout we discussed in the interview, my career trajectory requires the senior project manager designation.
So you tie it to the scope.
Right. You say, the senior title accurately reflects the actual complexity and executive visibility of the work I will be executing for you. You ask them to match the new hire salary with the correct upward slope.
But wait, timing and leverage are absolutely critical here. I know practitioners listening to this are terrified of doing this. Is there not a massive danger of blowing up the entire offer?
People are so scared of that.
I mean, if I get a great 30% salary bump and then I greedily start demanding a better title on top of it, the HR department might just get annoyed, pull the offer entirely, and call their second choice candidate.
That fear is valid, which is why there is a crucial, non-negotiable caveat to executing the power move. You only ask for the title upgrade after you have proven your absolute undeniable value during the interview process.
After the interview.
You never, ever demand a senior title in the initial 15-minute phone screen with a recruiter. You have no leverage then.
Not at all.
You have to wait. You wait until you have navigated the grueling 50-minute technical interview. You wait until you have demonstrated your absolute mastery of their specific domain. You wait until you have solved their hypothetical whiteboard problems, and you have made the hiring manager fall completely in love with your potential to solve their daily headaches.
You make yourself indispensable.
You must prove the value first, then, and only then, when they are emotionally, practically, and financially committed to hiring you over everyone else, you reshape the trajectory.
You make them want you so badly that changing a few words on an HR document feels like a minor administrative hurdle rather than a massive concession. But let us look at the worst-case scenario of the power move. What if they just say no? What if their strict corporate banding structure simply does not allow them to grant the senior title without internal equity issues? What if HR physically cannot do it?
That happens frequently. But even if they give you a hard no on the title change for day one, the ask itself is still a massive vital signal of your intentionality.
It shows you are paying attention.
By asking for the senior title, it tells the hiring manager that you are acutely aware of your own market worth. It shows you are actively managing your direction. It establishes a powerful baseline of professional respect before you even log in on your first day.
And very often, even if they cannot give you the senior title on the initial offer letter, that negotiation conversation becomes the direct foundation for a documented KPI-driven promotion plan at your first 6-month performance review.
It sets the stage.
You have planted the flag, you have put them on notice that you are operating on a steep upward trajectory, and they need to keep up if they want to retain you.
Okay, let us synthesize where we are. We have built a massive upward slope. We have ruthlessly curated our past evidence. We have projected a future that shows we are an appreciating asset.
A rocket ship.
We have reframed our flat patches using the axes of scope and intentional acquisition, and we have even negotiated our title upon entry using the power move. We are walking into the room projecting massive, steep, unstoppable rocket ship ambition.
We are looking great.
But this brings up a hidden tension. It is a subtle contradiction that I think a lot of highly driven Type A professionals run face first into. If we spend the entire interview projecting this unstoppable upward momentum and this hunger for the next level, will we not terrify the employer?
They might get scared.
Will the hiring manager look at us and think, this candidate is a mercenary? This person is just going to use our company to get the senior title on their resume, and the second they get it, they're going to leave in 8 months for director role at our competitor.
You have just perfectly identified the ambition trap. And to navigate the ambition trap, you must fundamentally understand the employer's deepest, darkest fear.
What is that?
Hiring is an incredibly expensive, disruptive, and painful process for a manager. It takes them away from their actual job. It requires hours of interviews, weeks of sluggish onboarding, and months of training before a new hire is actually profitable. The employer desperately needs the 2-year promise.
The 2-year promise, meaning the hiring manager needs to feel secure that they will get at least 2 solid, highly productive years of return on their investment from you before you inevitably jump ship.
Exactly. Visible, unchecked ambition reads as a massive flight risk. If you walk into that room radiating a desperate desire to conquer the world and climb the ladder rapidly, but you do not anchor that desire to their specific company, highly driven people will actively sabotage themselves.
They shoot themselves in the foot.
The hiring manager will reject you. And they will not reject you because you lack the technical skills. They will reject you because you are simply too risky of a financial investment. They cannot afford to train you just to watch you leave.
So how do we resolve this tension? How do we prove that we are a highly ambitious, appreciating asset with a great upward slope without triggering the ambition trap and looking like a flight risk?
The mechanical solution is aiming your ambition.
Aiming it.
You must locate your future climb inside their company, not away from it. The steep trajectory you are projecting must run directly through their organizational chart. Your ambition has to be a tool that serves them.
Let us script this out. If I am in that room, and my instinct is just to say my goal is to be a program director, I feel like that triggers the trap because it sounds entirely self-serving. How does a practitioner actually phrase this concept of aiming ambition in the room?
When they ask about your future goals, you do not just give a generic answer about wanting to be a director somewhere in the industry. You tie it specifically to their pain points. You look at the hiring manager and you say, my goal over the next 2 to 3 years is to elevate into a program director capacity. But more importantly, looking at the aggressive growth pipeline of this specific software division, I see the exact complex integration challenges right here that I want to tackle to earn that level.
That is smooth.
You add, I am looking for a professional home where I can build long-term structural value. I want to master these specific enterprise tools you're implementing, and I want to drive my career upward exclusively within this team.
You are telling them that your ambition is a weapon they get to wield. It is not a threat to their stability. Your hunger for promotion is going to fuel their department's success.
Win-win.
And this connects perfectly to practitioner knowledge about finding the right job fit. We always tell candidates that you should actively look for a role that is a slightly imperfect fit. You want a job where you know 80% of the core requirements cold, but 20% of the job description is brand new territory for you.
That imperfect fit is the exact mechanical engine that solves the ambition trap, because that 20% gap provides the necessary runway to grow.
Room to stretch.
That 20% room allows you to project massive ambitions safely. Why? Because your very next logical step is upward learning within their organization.
You cannot just leave.
You have to stay to learn their specific proprietary systems. You have to stay to navigate their specific complex stakeholder matrix. You have to stay to master their unique industry nuances. You are an appreciating asset, but the critical point is that the appreciation is happening on their balance sheet. You are proving that you plan to stay.
This entire deep dive is a complete paradigm shift for how practitioners need to walk into an interview room. Let us do a rapid-fire summary of the tactical playbook we have built today, because there is a lot of dense material to execute.
Let us hit the high points.
First, you have to stop being a passive participant and become the architect of your career trajectory. Stop treating your resume as a chronological receipt and start treating it as a vector with magnitude and direction. Second, you must detect the breaks and the flat patches before the hiring manager does. Third, reframe those flat titles using the hidden axes of scope, complexity, and budget scale.
Change the narrative.
Fourth, reframe any genuine stepbacks as an intentional acquisition of strategic skills. Fifth, when you finally get the offer, do not fall for the 30% trap. Negotiate the power move to fix your slope, not just your base salary.
Do not settle for the money alone.
And finally, aim your rocket ship ambition directly through the company's org chart, so you fulfill the psychological safety of the 2-year promise.
That is the complete architectural blueprint for controlling your narrative. And I want to leave you with one final stark realization.
What is that?
It is a reality that every professional has to accept. You cannot go back and re-edit the line you have already drawn. The past is fixed. The ink is completely dry on those early career moves, those flat patches, and those sideways hops. Time only flows one way.
That is a little sobering.
It is. But you have absolute total control over the exact next segment of that line, starting today. Starting with the very next tactical move you make. Starting with the very next interview you take, and the very next narrative reframe you choose to articulate in that room. You own the vector from this point forward. You decide the slope.
That is an incredibly empowering way to look at a daunting process. We started this deep dive talking about X-rays, medical diagnoses, and pattern recognition. We talked about how the diagnostic landscape of a career trajectory is full of muddy waters and dangerous assumptions.
A lot of quick judgments.
But those waters are only muddy if you sit back and let a tired hiring manager guess at what the shapes on your resume mean. When you actively control the narrative, when you ruthlessly curate the past and aggressively project the future, you clear the water entirely. You hand the hiring manager the exact high-value diagnosis you want them to have.
That is true. But there is a massive catch.
Always a catch.
Because even if you execute this playbook perfectly, even if you build the perfect upward trajectory, even if your visual slope is pristine and your verbal reframes are flawless, there is still a silent, invisible force that can completely ruin your perceived value in the room.
Oh, this is the absolute worst part of the process.
Yeah.
Because I have seen this happen. You can have the perfect piece of paper, the perfect 45-degree vector, and you can still lose the job offer simply because you are leaking desperation in the room.
Precisely. You can undo years of perfect career architecture with a few subconscious behaviors. In our next deep dive, we are going to expose the microsignals of neediness.
That is going to be a good one.
We're going to analyze the subtle, almost imperceptible ways that highly qualified candidates accidentally telegraph to the room that they need the job significantly more than the job needs them.
Which kills the leverage.
We will break down exactly how to identify and eliminate those microsignals entirely. We will teach you how to project high-value professional attachment without ever crossing the line into becoming arrogant or aloof.
You absolutely do not want to miss that session, because it is the final critical piece of the armor you need to win the offer. Until then, get your resume out, comb through it, find your breaks, and start architecting your vector. Keep diving deep,